بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum. So inshallah, we'll get started. But before we get started, I just want to mention one thing. Last time somebody had asked me about the name Ar-Rauf, which is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I mentioned I'll get back regarding it. So Rauf, if you translate it, it's very close in meaning to Ar-Rahim, merciful. But what I found is Ar-Rauf is the Rahim in intensified form. And one of the meanings is Ra'fa is one of the highest forms of mercy, where Allah protects his servant by warning them of deeds that necessitate punishment. So to give you like an example, let's say you go outside and you go outside right now with like your t-shirt, right? And then you get sick, and then your mother takes care of you, right? That's Rahim. But prior to even getting sick, your mother makes sure you dress up warm so you don't get sick. That's Rauf. And also one interesting thing about Ra'fa is their actions that are clearly manifestation of mercy. So what does this mean? If you guys remember, I told you last time that one of the understandings of Rahim could be, the child that's sick, and then the parent takes him to the doctor, and the child doesn't understand, right? Because they think they're going to get a needle and they're going to feel pain, but it's actually mercy, but they don't understand. Ra'fa is not like that. That it's clear mercy, right? That you understand that it's mercy. And interestingly, one of the names of the Prophet ﷺ, one of his attributes towards the believers is Ra'uf, because his mercy towards the believers is clear, right? So that's it for that. And now in terms of the sections, let me just go. So like we'll do like we did last time, which is we'll go over some revision. You know what? Maybe we'll go from revision from the beginning. It's good to kind of review from the beginning. Let's see what I can ask you. The meaning of ibtila. Ibtila. What does ibtila mean? I mentioned in the first session. Anybody? Sorry? To be tested? Yeah. Okay. And is it just in bad times or good times or both? Both. And fitna. What's one of the meanings of fitna? Trial. But what's the linguistic meaning? One of the linguistic meanings. So you understand? No. Okay. Exactly. Purifying metal, putting it in intense heat to purify it to make it more valuable. Let's see what else I can ask you guys from the first section. I think that's it. Look at the nature of this dunya. Okay. That's fine. We'll go to names and qualities of Allah in terms of revision. Okay, this is one that's I think it's important because you guys are gonna encounter this. If you have not already encountered it, imagine there's an atheist in front of you, all right? And they say, if God is all merciful and all powerful, why is there evil in the world? How will you answer it?
I normally say, basically, how do you define what's evil? That's the point, I think.
That's good, yeah, because what we consider evil is because we have a limited understanding, right? We just see a pixel reality. Allah sees everything incomplete. So it might be evil from our perspective, might not be evil in the grand scheme of things. And there's another component to that, which is what? It's related to the section I covered last week. Exactly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala see, that question assumes that there's only two attributes of Allah, that he's the most merciful and he's also all powerful. But there's a whole lot of attributes besides that, like he's the most wise, he's the most knowledgeable. And then we have limited knowledge. So when you understand those things, you understand that everything he's doing is based on his wisdom, is based on his knowledge, etc. Right? So understand our own limitations. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else. I know one example I gave, and there was many examples, but you know, Musa and, actually, let me go back. Musa, and who was it that he was with somebody, and then they saw a bird that grabbed water from the ocean, and then they said that our knowledge is just like a drop compared to Allah's knowledge. Who is he with? Khidr, exactly. And who is Khidr? Huh? Yeah, might be a prophet, Allahu Alam, but somebody of knowledge. And where's the surah? What surah is it mentioned? The story of Musa and Khidr? Surah Kahf, yeah. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. I don't think so. I think we can get to the. Well, this is just a reminder, and in the book I mentioned these different adhkar and dua that raditu billahi rabba wa bil islami deena wa bi Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam nabiyya. This is the dua that we should be saying every morning and every evening, and it's a reminder to us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the greatest blessing, which is Islam. Let's see. Oh, okay. This is one more question actually. Al-Wudud. It comes in the Quran in 2 surahs, but what's the difference between mawadda and hub? So hub translates as love, mawadda also translates as love. But what's the difference? Exactly. So hub can be love, but maybe not manifest. But mawadda is through action. You know, that the person gives you something, gives you a gift or shows it. So that's the difference between mawadda and hub. Okay. I'll show you the benefits, subhanAllah. Let's see. Actually, okay. You guys mentioned to me some of the benefits of tests and trials. What are some of the benefits of going through difficulty? Good, good. Yeah, go. Closer to Allah, mashallah, okay. Purify the sins, good. Anything else?
Having greater knowledge of Allah,
SubhanAllah, yeah. That's it. And then we're at anything?
You can't know what things are going to happen.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. You can't know about ease until you go through difficulty. And there's an interesting, it's by a classical scholar, Izzuddin Abdus Salam, I believe. It's a very short, he has like, I think it's like he lists just a bunch of wisdoms behind sufferings. You could go find the PDF. I don't know what the book's called, but you could find it. Izzuddin Salam, The Wisdom of Evil, or something like that. Benefits of Trials. Okay, so we will get to the next section, which is about the righteous people who have attained success in this life and in the next. And this is important, and this is one of the means of coping with difficulties, is we study the lives of the righteous. Because again, you know, for whatever reason, we go through something, difficulty, and shaitan comes to us and like, why is my life so terrible? Everybody else's lives are okay. And especially in our times with, social media, people put images of their lives. They select, what they want to show. And it seems like everybody has a perfect life except yourself, which is, and in the end, it's just like it's just an image they're showing, right? They're not showing their complete life. And that's what there's been studies showed that the more that people engage with social media, a lot of times it increases depression, right? So I'm not to say not to engage with social media, just recognize what it is. So it's important to study the lives of the righteous, because when you study their lives, then you'll see that the best of people were tested the most, right? And I was looking for this quote. I saw it a long time ago and I couldn't find it. But the gist of it is, if you look at the lives of the best people on this planet, you will see that they went through immense trials. And the examples, I remember some of them, they said, if you think being a single mother, that means you're hated by Allah, then know that Maryam alayhi salam was a single mother. If you think domestic violence, your husband abusing you is a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates you, then know that Asiya, one of the best of women, was abused by Pharaoh, right? If you think that having no child makes you, and this is unfortunately in some Muslim cultures, when people get married and somebody doesn't have a child, they make them feel less. But Aisha anha, the most beloved, she didn't have a child, right? If you think being a widow or being a widow is something that makes you less, Khadija anha was a widow. She was the vice of Prophet. If you think being poor it means you're not beloved to Allah. The no biladata was poor, right? If you think being a refugee makes you know that Musa alayhi salam was a refugee. If you think being called a criminal in your society makes you less, Musa alayhi salam was accused of being a criminal. If you think being falsely accused makes you less, Yusuf alayhi salam was falsely accused. If you think your family is messed up, know that Yusuf alayhi salam, his brothers tried to kill him. I don't think anybody, you guys, your brother, sister tried to kill you, hopefully, So the idea is that we understand that when we look into their lives, we'll see that they were tested. And it's amazing they were tested in different ways. And today's session will just be getting a glimpse into those tests. And there's a famous hadith of Khabbab ibn al-Arat. He went to the Prophet and this is in the Meccan period, and he goes to the Prophet, make dua to Allah because we're going through so much difficulty. And Khabbab wasn't just a regular Sahaba. He was somebody who they used to take hot iron and burn his back because of his Islam, to get him to leave Islam. They used to torture him. So he told the Prophet, this is too much. And the Prophet said that before you, there were nations who were also tortured because of their Islam. Some they were cut in half, sawed in half. Others, they had iron combs, and their flesh was removed from their bones. And this was the state of these people, but they didn't recant Islam. They didn't recant their Iman. And then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned how this deen, this Islam, will spread. So he gave two things very interesting. On the one hand, he's consoling Khabbab by saying other people have went through stuff. But then he's also giving glad tidings that the suffering you're going through, there's going to be fruits that are going to come. Even if you don't live to see it, this struggle that you're going through is not for any reason, right? And this is something that, we're the fruits of the sacrifices of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. It's very interesting that, give you one example of this. At the time of, they call it Am al-Huzn, the year of sadness. This was one of the most difficult years of the Prophet ﷺ, right? His wife Khadija died, his uncle Abu Talib died, and he was looking for a place where he could get protection, he could practice his religion. Because in Mecca, they were boycotting the Muslims. It was a very difficult time. So he went to Taif, the city of Taif. And instead of the people embracing, they humiliated him, they threw stones at him until his sandals were bloody. And it's a long story, but the gist of it is when they did that to him, an angel came and basically said that we could destroy these people because of what they did to you. And what did the Prophet say? What did he say? Yeah. And what's really interesting is, does anybody heard of Muhammad ibn Qasim? Who is Muhammad ibn Qasim?
It's a very complex in the part of Pakistan.
Yeah, basically the subcontinent, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, basically became Muslim because of him. And he came from that place. It's amazing. And this is, we see, how the Prophet ﷺ had that patience and he was thinking ahead. And the Quran itself says, that do you think that you will enter paradise without being tested like those who were tested before you? And it says, that they were tested with affliction and difficulty. What does zulzilu mean? What is zilzal? Earthquake. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing the state of the human being like that. Imagine, it's like they're so shaken of what they're going through, right? That's their state. To the point where the messenger, even the messenger, and the believers are saying, Mata nasrullah, when's the help of Allah gonna come? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ala inna nasrullahi qareeb, the help of Allah is near. Think about that. Sometimes we think, and as we go through this, we'll understand. We think that being righteous, it means being like having no emotions, right? But that's not what it is. You're going to have emotions, you're going to have pain, you're going to have all those things. The point is to direct it towards Allah. One of the things about trials and difficulties is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching you to increase your isti'ana. What's isti'ana? We say, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. You alone do we worship. We understand that part, right? That part, if somebody comes and they worship something else, you'll be like, it's shirk. But do only seek your help. This is a really powerful aspect, which is when you go through difficulty, you start to realize The only Allah can change your condition. Nobody else. Right? And when you go through different, and that's why sometimes you'll go through periods of your life where you feel like everybody let you down. Right? Your friends, you might go through those times, and then Allah's help will come. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching you that those people, even your loved ones, alhamdulillah, you love them for the sake of Allah, but only I can change your condition. And and then the one thing to understand about this idea of righteous being tested, the Prophet was asked, Ayyun nasu ashadu bala. Who are the people who are tested the most? And what did he say? Al-Anbiya, the prophets. And then after the prophets, those who are come after them in terms of religiosity. And then after that, the next who are righteous. And a person is tested according to their religion. So the closer you are to Allah, the more you'll be tested, right? And the prophets were tested the most, right? So this is one thing to understand, is a person will be tested according to their religion. To give you some examples, Ayub alayhi salam. What was Ayub's test? Sickness, right? And his sickness was so bad that he lost all his wealth. Most of his family abandoned him. The society, nobody wanted to be around him. Just his wife stayed with him. Everybody left him. And he lost all his, and he was super sick. And in this state, and it's lasted for a long time. And in this state, he said to Allah, Anni masir durru wa anta arhamar rahimin. That, oh Allah, I've been hit with affliction, touched with affliction, but you're the most merciful, the most merciful. It's very powerful. You think about it, he's acknowledging, Allah, you are the most merciful. And he's going through so much suffering. Again, you connect it back to our lives. Somebody gets, a disease, cancer or something, or we know loved ones who get, and you should understand that Ayub was also tested with sickness, right? Having a disease doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't love you. It's a test from Allah, or whether it's somebody close to you, right? And again, when you look and you study the Quran and Hadith, you'll find any test you're going through, you'll find examples for it. You'll find examples for it. And then, as we know, he was patient. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaced, basically he got healthy again, and he got, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him better company, and his wealth was returned to him. Next, Maryam alayhi salam. So Maryam, we all know the story, how she was miraculously conceived, Isa alayhi salam, right? The Messiah, right? The Prophet of Allah. But what's interesting is that journey there. She's pregnant with Isa. She's by herself. She's a young girl, right? Like in the sense that she's a young woman. And she says, so in this state now she has labor pains. So she's giving birth. There's no she's not in a hospital, people helping her. She's by herself, giving birth. And she says, Ya laytni mittu qabla hadha wa kuntu nasiyan mansiya. I mean, this is powerful. She says, I wish I had died before this, or I was forgotten, a thing that was forgotten. I mean, I can't do justice to the translation. Nasiyan mansiya means I was not only forgotten, I was forgotten. One thing is to forget, and one thing is it's like you forget, it didn't even exist, didn't even occur in you. She's just saying, I just wish I wasn't in existence. Now, the reason why I mention this is she's one of the best people to ever walk the face of this planet. And you see, the Quran records this statement of her. I mean, somebody expresses that type of anguish, you'd be like, astaghfirullah, this is Maryam alayhi salam saying this. So one, it's the physical pain, but there's a second component to this. There's a psychological anguish too, which is what? She's giving birth to Isa. She's not married. What do you think her society is going to say? What do you think they're going to say about her? Huh? They will accuse her of zina. A'udhu billah. And she will, and mind you, now we're living in a time where we're really in a disgusting time in history where there's no modesty. So people can have children out, wallah, nobody cares. But especially in traditional societies, and still, that was a major thing, right? Major thing. And they accused her of it. Imagine now she's from a very righteous family, and one, she has the pain of giving birth to Isa, and then she has to deal with the psychological, what are people going to say? And people did say stuff. And she's worried about her honor. And look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored her. That half the world, Muslims and Christians, of course their understanding is incorrect, but they honor Maryam and Isa, probably the most honored woman in history. You see how she was scared that she would be dishonored and castigated, and Allah honored her to the point where, you know, half the world honors her and loves her. I mean, this is amazing, right? And then of course she gave birth to Isa, you know, the Messiah. Next, Yaqub. So Yaqub, what was his trial? Yeah, exactly. So you imagine this difficulty. And you know, Allah protect, there are people like this, families, Allah protect all of us. They have a child or a family member, and the family member is gone, and they don't know what state they're in. And Allah protect our brothers and sisters in Gaza. We know that they're actually facing this right now. You know, I don't want to, but you know, I was just looking at there's one story of a woman who had to give her baby to the cross the border in Egypt because she couldn't cross the border. But it's better that he goes to Egypt, so at least he'll survive. It was very painful. So Yaqub, he was separated from Yusuf. So the love between family members, and they're both prophets as well. And then it's so sad that he loses his eyesight. And he says, إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحَزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ, that I complain about my anguish and sorry only to Allah. Now this is a key thing. Complaining to Allah does not contradict patience. Complaining about Allah contradicts patience. You see the difference? So if you tell Allah, Allah, this is too much for me, I'm weak, you know, I can't handle this, there's nothing wrong with that. Because you're telling Allah, I can't handle it. We're all weak. So you're complaining to Allah. That doesn't contradict. You're showing Allah that I'm a slave. I can't do anything without you. Now, complaining about Allah, I mean, you go to, you know, Fulan and Fulan, and be like, why did Allah do this to me? That's different. That's complaining about Allah. That contradicts. And to add a nuance to that, it also doesn't contradict patience if you're going to that person because you want to get advice or counsel, or you want to just a person to strengthen. That also doesn't contradict patience, right? There's nothing wrong with going to people and getting advice and consolation. Adinu nasiha, right? And this is something that the Sahaba and the righteous, they did with each other. So this is another thing. And imagine to the point where he became blind. And as we know, that separation was painful for him, but eventually he returned and he met Yusuf in a state where Yusuf was. He was, you know, basically became the minister in a high position in Egypt. And look at Yusuf's test. It's amazing. You know, Yusuf, for one, his brothers tried to, like, they throw him in the well, right? If you think your brothers and sisters are annoying, imagine that, right? And then he gets taken out the well. Okay, now I'm finally good. He gets enslaved. Okay, he's enslaved. Okay, next trial. But okay, like the people who like enslaved him or bought him, whatever, they're kind of nice. So okay, fine. Now he's and then what happens? The wife of the person who's his master basically accuses him of zina. She tries to first get him to zina. He says no, and then she accuses him. Another test. And then, of course, he doesn't listen. And then they throw him in jail. And then when he's in jail, you know, he spends a very long time. And then those guys, he has two cellmates, and they have these dreams. So he tells them the meaning of the dreams. And, you know, one of them gets, you know, out. And then they're saying, I'm going to tell the king about you, but he forgets. So one thing after another, just one test after another, after another, after another. But all those tests was elevating Yusuf, right? It was just to make him to a higher state. And that's why they say, that's also, they say one of the things, if you want to kind of read a story in the Quran that about patience, read the story of Yusuf. One of the interesting things about Surah Yusuf is it's the only surah in the Quran that's like a story from the beginning to end. Other parts of the surahs, it's like it kind of jumps from one story to another. Surah Yusuf, from the beginning to the end, it's just his story. And of course, the best of creation, the Prophet ﷺ, right? The best of creation. If anybody, deserved the things of this world, it would have been him. And yet you look at his life. The Prophet ﷺ, all his children, except one, died during his life. Fatima, who died a few months after he had passed away. Imagine a parent bearing all their children, right? He had to watch his own community insult him, his own relatives reject him, say he's crazy. They tortured his followers, they killed his followers. They tried to kill him many times. They insulted him, they abused him. And even, when we think about Medina, we think, alhamdulillah, but what was Medina? Medina, they're there. They were struggling in Medina too. And many times when the wars that happen in Medina against Quraysh, they're essentially the Quraysh trying to wipe them out. That's what they are. And the Muslims defending themselves, right? And subhanAllah. And then look at the fact that, there's a very interesting hadith where once the Prophet ﷺ, he was very hungry. And he went and he met Umar, and he was also hungry. They were starving, basically. And I believe they met Abu Bakr too, I'm pretty sure. So they're all starving. So there's one Sahaba, he had like one of those things called like a garden with dates. So he brought them in. And he brought them in the shade. And then he gave them dates. And he gave them water. And he let them sit in the shade. And the Prophet said, you will be asked about these blessings. I said, we'll be asked about this? He says, you will be asked about, the dates, the water, the shade. You'll be asked about all these things. Now think about that. Forget about cold water, we have running water. This is something kings didn't have, Kings didn't have running water, right? And now, it's like, subhanAllah, like, oh, I'm not going to buy Naya, I'm going to get Eska, right? And I know like a lot of like apartment buildings and houses, the pipes are really disgusting and polluted. So I'm not like, to save your health, you can take it. But I'm trying to save. You go to the grocery store and pick like 50 different companies and pick your company for water. And forget water, you go and you could pick like any juice, anything very easily, right? I have to organize events sometimes. I work for a charity, so sometimes we organize events. And subhanAllah, we're doing charitable work where we're raising funds for poor people. And sometimes people complain about the food. Why is there no Coke and this and that? And you're like, subhanAllah. Now look at dates. He said about dates. You go to the grocery store, you could pick oranges from Peru, mangoes from like Pakistan, tomatoes from, I don't know, wherever tomatoes grow. Whatever, you could just pick it. It's all there. Literally from all over the world, just coming. I mean, this is something when you think about it. And then you talk about shade. They were on the shade because of coolness. Now you go into your place, into your house, your apartment, wherever you are, and you could adjust to the exact degree. I mean, I remember I always tell somebody, you want to like increase your shukr, just reflect on your food. And there's no way you can't increase your shukr. I'm going to give you an example. You have like a burger. Think about the burger. Like you have the bread, which probably took months to, grow and sift and all those things. And then you have the meat. That animal took, a long time to basically be raised and fed. And then somebody had to slaughter it and process it. And then you have all the veggies inside that come from all different parts of the world. And then you have the sauce, which is made of, it's crazy when you think about it. And yet, insan, we're in this state now where we're just, ungrateful. Being ungrateful is not because we don't have. It's because we don't reflect about the things that we have. So this is something to think about. And, this is basically this section. And it's just like a glimpse. But, this is something that we should all incorporate. Studying the lives of, I would say you could start with the prophets and then look into the righteous, the Sahaba. And this is something you should inculcate into your into your daily routine or whatever it is. And this is something that goes out throughout history. It's very interesting. As I mentioned, it's based on your level and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you look at the righteous scholars throughout history, they were tested immensely. Immensely. Ibn Taymiyyah, he's one of like the giant scholars of our history, right? And he was in jail so many times, and he was tortured, and he went through a very difficult time, and he said something very beautiful once. He said, "What can my enemies do to me? My paradise is in my heart." Basically, he's saying that sweetness of faith. He said, if they put me in jail, I'll be in khalwa, meaning I'll be by myself just worshiping Allah. If they exile me, if they kick me out of my land, I'll travel the land and look at Allah's creation. And if they kill me, I'll be a martyr and I'll be in Jannah. What can my enemies do to me? This is really looking at something in a, like what do they say, like half glass full or whatever it is. That's what he did. And he was, and we know, like, they call Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah Sheikh al-Islam. Why? Because of his contributions. The people who persecuted him, if I ask most people, they won't know their names. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved his legacy. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he was also persecuted and tortured during his life. Right? And interesting enough, and I'll mention this, some of the people who agreed to his persecution were corrupt scholars who work with the rulers. And Ahmad bin Hanbal, he said something, and he wasn't boasting, because he understood the reality. He told once people, "You'll understand our difference when I die." And he said that when he died, the streets were full of people praying his janazah. They tried to destroy his legacy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved it. And all those people who persecuted him, they are forgotten. So I think, so that's about half an hour. I think before going to the next section, I did something like last second, because I was preparing a khutbah. And I think what I'll do is, I'll do like a bit of a discussion of this surah. It's Surah Buruj. So I don't know if you guys remember, I mentioned something specific about Surah Buruj. What is Surah Buruj about? Exactly. Killed and burned. They were basically, in modern definition, you would call it genocide. That's what Surah Buruj is about. It's about genocide. Believers who were burnt alive because they were believers. So obviously, I won't be able to go over everything. I just want to mention a few things about this surah. And hopefully, because this is something I did last second, you'll get a glimpse into how you could reflect on the Quran and how it will give you guidance. The Quran is rich, right? The Quran is rich. And sometimes, again, we get scared from the Quran. The Quran was there to give us guidance. It doesn't mean like, if you don't have background, you don't go and you try to become a faqih, but reflect. Most of the Quran is not rules, just to be clear. It's about reflection, getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ, which you translate as, by the sky full of constellations. Okay, that's the beginning of the surah. Now, when you look at the sky, somebody who doesn't know anything about astronomy and the galaxies, they look at the sky. Well, if you look here, you're just going to see darkness because there's so much pollution, right? And then the artificial lights block out the beauty of the sky. But if you go to like the country or to where there's no pollution, there's no light pollution, what are you going to see when you look at the sky? Stars, right? Now, the person who's not trained, they look at those and they see random lights everywhere. They go, oh, it's nice, but they don't see any logic behind it. But somebody who studies astronomy, what are they going to see? You're going to see constellations, right? Remember, well, there's a Big Dipper, there's this. They're going to see that there's order in the sky. And interestingly enough, when you look at the constellations, you understand it, that will also guide you if you're ever lost. It's going to tell you where to go, right? So this is the nature, one, of reality. Yeah, and this is one of the things, the modern world, especially the secular Western world, is suffering from nihilism. What's nihilism? The idea that there's no meaning. They can't make sense of it, right? And that's why, subhanAllah, I shouldn't laugh, but when COVID happened, do you guys see those videos of people running to the grocery store trying to get toilet paper and they're like panicking? Yeah, and then and I don't want to you see in the Muslim world, people are just like chilling, maybe a bit too much, right? They weren't like, like in Islam, you take the precautions, right? But you see the contrast. It was funny, but so because people can't understand that there's purpose to all this, that there's meaning to all this. And this is what our deen teaches us, to understand that there's meaning behind everything. And another thing is, the Quran itself will teach you that, right? So this is the first thing. And again, going back to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Palestine, have you guys heard of Lauren Booth? Lauren Booth. You heard of her, right? Who is she? Exactly. The former Prime Minister of UK, Tony Blair, his sister-in-law. So Lauren Booth is very interesting, and I would recommend you guys look her up. So she was somebody, she went to visit Palestine. This is years ago. And she went to visit, the Palestinians. And when she visited them, of course, they were in extreme poverty, oppressed, everything. But she was amazed at their iman and at their akhlaq, at their generosity. They had nothing, and they would give her food, and they'd be nice to her. She didn't understand it, right? And she was amazed, so then it made her think about Islam and all those things, and she ended up becoming Muslim. And she's a firm, advocate for Islam and Muslims now. The sister of Tony Blair, subhanAllah. And now, subhanAllah, in the West, people's Wi-Fi connection breaks down, they start crying, right? They're like, oh, what do I do, right? Because Iman will give you that strength. It will give you that strength. And there's been studies of this, It's really interesting that some of the most richest nations in terms of GDP and all that, are nations that are predominantly atheist. But they also have higher suicide rates. Right? And you see in Muslim countries, despite all the problems, suicide rates are very low. Mental health issues are lower. Now, of course, there are issues, but even those issues, a lot of them are caused by artificial stuff like war and all those things. Not to say it doesn't exist in the community, right? But there's definitely a contrast. There's definitely a contrast. And it's not to say that you won't have sadness, because as I mentioned, all these cases, they had sadness, the prophets, but the deen will give you tools on how to deal with it. And, okay, I'll only be able to do 2-3 ayahs. وَيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and the promised day of judgment. That whatever injustice exists in this world, we say Malik Yawmiddin. Allah is the master of the day of judgment. As the scholars mentioned, this is the first threat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving to those who oppress others. You think that you'll get away with this? There's a day that's going to come and every single person will be held to account of it. To the point where the hornless sheep that was hit by another sheep, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take them account. Everything will be set right on that day. And it's again, in this life, sometimes you feel like, you got the short hand of something, right? You got screwed, that's what they say. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching everything. And He will set everything right. And on our part, that means is when we trust in Allah, when we're going through difficulty, and we are not the people who are oppressing others. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold us account, right? Also, Umar, he would say, when he was Khalifa, I'm worried about a stray sheep that dies on the Euphrates River. That I'll be asked about it. So, subhanAllah. And then next, was shahid wa mashhud. And the scholars differ. What is the shahid and what's the mashhud? But it means the witnesser and the witnessed. We should know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is witnessing everything. Everything. There's not one thing that slips what He's seeing. And also shahid can refer to the angels, and the righteous will bear witness on that day. And then the things that are being witnessed, like the events or the people on the day of judgment. And the last thing I'll mention will be, I'll go to the last ayah because the surah is long. Qutila ashab al-ukhdud. So it's cursed are the companions of the trenches, I guess. And what is He referring to? The people who oppress the believers. They're cursed by Allah. What's interesting, I was looking into this surah. There's a very famous story, which I won't go into, about the context of this surah. What's interesting is that story, which is in Sahih Muslim, so it's an authentic story. However, the scholars mention that the surah doesn't clearly mention that that story is connected with that. And one of the things the scholars mention is that this surah can refer to multiple incidences. It doesn't have to refer to one historical event because this reoccurs in history. It's very interesting and very profound that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left it open, that this could happen throughout, and it has happened multiple times in history. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us how to deal with it. So I guess like that, I'll stop there because we're at 45. I'll open up for questions or comments.